Nathaniel Brooks, the future leader of this company. That was how he introduced himself to my team moments before sliding into my leather chair as though he owned the place. His tone carried the arrogance of someone who believed bloodline mattered more than competence. My name is Amelia Carter, Chief Financial Officer of Brooks Manufacturing, a mid-sized industrial equipment company based in Columbus, Ohio. I am 42 years old, with 15 years of service to this firm, a career built through dedication, long nights, and unyielding commitment to financial integrity. Unlike Nathaniel, who at 35 still acted like a spoiled heir, I had earned my position. He had inherited his last name. From the doorway of what had been my office, I watched him sift through files he had no right to touch. Confidential financial documents lay scattered across the desk while he sipped casually from a mug that wasn't his. He looked up with mock surprise when I spoke. "Excuse me, this is my office," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, Amelia, perfect timing," Nathaniel replied, gesturing as if I were his guest. "Please sit. We should discuss the transition." His audacity was almost theatrical. I knew his behavior had been escalating since Mr. Brooks, his father and our company's founder, suffered a health scare 3 months earlier. Nathaniel had begun circling like a vulture. He appeared at board meetings uninvited, introduced himself to clients as the next CEO, and made constant remarks about family legacy. He was determined to claim what he believed was rightfully his control of the company. But Nathaniel misunderstood how this business truly worked. Brooks Manufacturing was not a playground for entitlement. Mr. Brooks had built it over 30 years on discipline and trust. When I joined as a junior accountant, fresh out of Ohio State, he personally mentored me, teaching me that financial rigor was the foundation of survival. Over the years, he entrusted me with increasing responsibility, and when the previous CFO retired, he promoted me without hesitation. To him, I was not just an employee, but a steward of the company's heart. Nathaniel, on the other hand, floated in and out whenever it suited him. Fresh from failed ventures or lavish vacations, he expected a corner office and an executive salary. His father humored him with isolated projects, but never let him near core operations. Now, emboldened by Mr. Brooks' illness, he no longer bothered with subtlety. 8 months ago, I had noticed suspicious wire transfers linked to his department, small amounts at first, then larger. Vendors with generic names websites built from stock photos and invoices that raised red flags. When questioned, Nathaniel dismissed my concerns with vague excuses. I recognized them for what they were: shell companies. That was when I began quietly gathering evidence. Screenshots, purchase orders, transaction records. Each piece pointed to a deeper scheme. And now, watching Nathaniel pretend to crown himself the rightful heir, I knew one thing with certainty: his arrogance would become his downfall. The following weeks at Brooks Manufacturing unfolded with the surreal rhythm of a storm building on the horizon, slow at first, almost imperceptible, and then suddenly violent. For months, I had known something was wrong with Nathaniel Brooks, the founder's son, who strutted through the halls as if his inheritance were already guaranteed. His arrogance was irritating, yes, but arrogance alone couldn't sink a company. Theft, however, could. And that was exactly what I was beginning to uncover. I, Amelia Carter, Chief Financial Officer, had made a career out of noticing details other people missed. Numbers told stories, tiny whispers of truth hidden between decimals and invoices. It was 8 months ago when the first whispers appeared. At first, it seemed harmless: a $10,000 wire transfer to a vendor called Midwest Business Partners. When I asked Nathaniel about it, since it came from his departmental budget, he waved a dismissive hand. New supplier relationships, he said, already bored by the conversation. A month later, there was another $15,000 to Industrial Advisory Group, then $30,000 to Northern Solutions, LLC. The pattern was obvious to me, but invisible to anyone who didn't spend their life combing through accounts. I began to dig quietly. Each time I tried to verify the vendors. Their websites were skeletal, built from cheap templates with stock photos of smiling office workers who almost certainly didn't exist. Their listed addresses led to mail forwarding services. Phone numbers rang endlessly into voicemail. These weren't partners, they were ghosts. That's when I contacted Sophie Lang, a forensic financial investigator I had worked with during a complicated audit 2 years earlier. Sophie was sharp, precise, and relentless. Follow the money, she told me over coffee one evening. Shell companies always leave a trail, no matter how cleverly disguised. Within weeks, Sophie confirmed my suspicion. Each of those vendors led back through a maze of limited liability companies to Nathaniel himself. The scope of the theft. By the time Mr. Brooks, our founder, suffered his heart attack 3 months ago, the scheme had escalated beyond modest sums. Sophie's analysis showed that Nathaniel was siphoning more than $200,000 a month. In total, he had stolen $2.4 million. The sophistication of the operation startled me. Nathaniel wasn't as clueless as I had once thought. Each company filed proper tax documents. Each had carefully designed invoices. The illusion of legitimacy was strong enough that casual oversight would miss it. But beneath the surface, it was still theft. And the impact on Brooks Manufacturing was devastating. Vendor payments were delayed. Expansion projects stalled. Employees whispered about tighter budgets and postponed bonuses. Mr. Brooks had attributed the financial strain to market fluctuations. He never imagined that his own son was bleeding the company dry. I kept the evidence in a secure drive. Copies of transfers, screenshots of emails, forged invoices, and Sophie's meticulous charts tracing funds as they funneled through fake companies into accounts Nathaniel controlled. Still, I didn't move. Not yet. Evidence was one thing, but timing was everything. I needed Nathaniel to reveal his hand in a way that no one, especially the board, could ignore. The meeting that morning began with routine calm. By mid-afternoon, chaos had erupted. Without notice, Nathaniel summoned my entire finance team into the glass-walled conference room. From my office, I watched as he strutted to the head of the table, a leather portfolio under his arm. My colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had worked with me for years, trusted me, and now were being asked to accept direction from a man who had never earned his place. There will be significant changes. Nathaniel began, his voice heavy with theatrical gravitas. This company has been too cautious, too slow. Amelia's conservative strategies are holding us back. That ends today. A chill ran through me. He was setting the stage not just to undermine me, but to seize authority outright. Clara Jensen, my senior analyst, raised her hand. But Mr. Brooks hasn't formally retired. And shouldn't Amelia, our CFO, be leading this meeting? Nathaniel's expression hardened. My father is stepping down for health reasons. The transition is happening whether Amelia agrees or not. This is a family business. Family legacy matters more than procedure. The words rippled through the room. My team glanced toward me through the glass. I gave them the smallest shake of my head, stay calm. Then, Nathaniel revealed his real agenda. He pulled a stack of documents from his portfolio and slid them across the table toward Thomas Blake, our accounts payable manager. Priority transfers, Nathaniel said. $700,000 to initiate partnerships with new consultants. Process them immediately. Thomas's hands hovered above the papers but didn't move. Company policy requires CFO approval for any transfer above $50,000, he said carefully. And board notification. Not anymore, Nathaniel snapped. Policy is changing. I am invoking emergency executive powers during this transition. Emergency powers. The phrase almost made me laugh, but my team looked shaken. They were loyal, but Nathaniel carried the founder's name and names carried weight. I quietly activated the conference room's recording system from my desk. Every arrogant declaration, every invented authority was being captured, gathering ammunition. Back in my office, I opened my secure folder. Months of evidence glowed on the screen. Transfers, forged invoices, corporate filings. And Sophie's 40-page report, the crown jewel of my case. She had traced every dollar from Brooks Manufacturing to ghost vendors through layered accounts and finally into luxury purchases, sports cars, European vacations, a penthouse apartment. Nathaniel had built his empire of lies on our company's foundation. As I scanned the documents, my phone buzzed. A message from Clara. "He's demanding account passwords. What should we do?" I typed quickly. "Stall him. Verify with the board first. Do not give him access." Every desperate demand he made only tightened the noose. The forged restructuring, the coup escalated when Nathaniel unveiled yet another surprise. Standing tall in front of the team, he produced legal documents and declared, effective immediately, Brooks Manufacturing will be restructured as Brooks Holdings. I will serve as Chief Executive Officer and President. My father will retain an honorary title, but all decisions will flow through me. The silence in the room was suffocating. Even through the glass wall, I could feel the disbelief. He continued, "I have already filed the necessary paperwork with the state. This restructuring is legally binding. Anyone unwilling to support this transition is free to leave." My stomach tightened. If he truly had filed incorporation documents, he could attempt to legitimize his theft. I opened the Ohio Secretary of State's website, navigating quickly until I found it Brooks Holdings LLC filed that morning. Relief flooded me when I saw the flaws. Nathaniel had forged his father's signature, listed himself as the sole managing member, and even referenced the wrong corporate registration number. It was sloppy, desperate, and illegal. I took screenshots of every page and added them to my evidence folder. With that, Nathaniel's scheme had crossed into outright criminal fraud. The breaking point. By late afternoon, Nathaniel was unraveling. His commands grew more frantic. He paced the conference room, insisting that time was critical, that money had to be moved immediately. His voice rose in pitch with every objection from my staff. Clara texted again. He's growing angrier. We're stalling, but he knows something is wrong. That was when I realized the moment had come. I had enough. More than enough. I drafted my email to the board, attaching Sophie's report, my own documentation screenshots of the fraudulent filings, and the audio recording from the meeting. The subject line read simply, "Urgent evidence of fraud and unauthorized corporate restructuring." I didn't send it yet. Not until Nathaniel pushed himself over the edge completely. The fatal mistake. Nathaniel's voice thundered once more, echoing down the hallway. "This is still a family business. The Brooks name carries authority that supersedes procedure. The board will rubber stamp whatever I recommend." Perfect. Another reckless statement, another line of evidence to seal his fate. I added the transcript to my notes, then closed my laptop. The trap was ready. Through the glass, I could see my team's discomfort harden into quiet defiance. They didn't trust Nathaniel. They trusted me. And soon the board would see the truth too. At that moment, I knew one thing with certainty. Nathaniel's downfall was no longer a possibility. It was inevitable. And I was ready to deliver the final blow. The walls of Brooks Manufacturing felt smaller that afternoon, as if the entire building was holding its breath. I had been waiting for Nathaniel Brooks to overplay his hand, and now the moment was here. His voice carried through the thin walls of the conference room, boasting about new powers, new controls, and a future where he alone would dictate the fate of the company. My team looked uneasy, and I knew their loyalty was being tested. By the time Nathaniel stormed into my office, his face was flushed and his composure slipping. He didn't knock, of course he didn't. He marched inside, saw the half-packed box on my desk, and froze. "Why are you packing?" he demanded. And why haven't you instructed your team to process the transfers? Those payments should already be underway. I closed my laptop with deliberate calm, my finger hovering above the send button of an email addressed to the board. Because neither I nor my team work for you, Nathaniel. The color drained from his face, replaced by a flash of anger. You're fired, he snapped, his voice cracking under the weight of desperation. Security will escort you out. On whose authority? I asked evenly. You filed fraudulent paperwork. Brooks Holdings doesn't exist as a legal entity, which means you have no authority to fire anyone. His mouth opened, then closed again, as though he were trying to find air in a room suddenly emptied of oxygen. How did I know? I interrupted, standing up slowly. Because I actually do my job. And unlike you, I don't assume people won't notice millions disappearing. That last word hit him like a blow. Millions, he echoed, voice barely above a whisper. 2.4, I corrected. That's the exact total you've stolen over the last 8 months, through 5 shell companies. Industrial Partners, Midwest Consulting. Professional Alliance, all of them registered to mail forwarding addresses. All of them tied directly to you. He staggered back a step, his bravado collapsing. You can't prove that. Sophie Lang. I said, my voice cutting like glass, one of the best forensic investigators in the state. She documented every transfer, every forged signature, every false invoice. 40 pages, Nathaniel. It's airtight. For the first time since this charade began, he looked afraid. He grabbed the back of my chair for support, his knuckles white. What do you want? He whispered. Money. A promotion. I can make this worth your while. I almost laughed at the absurdity. What I want is justice. You've stolen from your father, from your colleagues, from the company that has been the livelihood of hundreds of employees. This ends today. His eyes darted toward my laptop. He lunged for it, but I was already stepping aside, my hand clutching the handle of the box with one arm and my laptop with the other. Stay out of my way, Nathaniel. Behind me, I could hear his voice breaking into a frantic pitch. You'll destroy the family name. Everything my father built. No, I cut him off. You destroyed it. I'm the one making sure it survives. The email. In the hallway, I paused just long enough to hit send. The email shot across the network to 7 board members, carrying with it Sophie's report, my documentation screenshots of fraudulent filings, and most damning of all, the recording from that morning's meeting. Nathaniel's voice clear and confident, declaring his invented emergency powers and demanding a $700,000 transfer. It was irrefutable. As I walked past the conference room, my team looked up. Clara's eyes locked on mine, full of worry, but also relief. I gave her a small nod. It was over now. The trap had been sprung. The board's reaction. By the time I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed. Robert Whitman, chairman of the board, was calling. His voice was strained. Amelia, please tell me this isn't real. It's all documented, I replied calmly. Every transfer, every false filing, every recording. Nathaniel has stolen $2.4 million and today, he tried to steal $700,000 more. I heard silence, then the sound of papers being shuffled. The recording you included, he actually said those words. He invoked executive powers. 40 minutes ago, I confirmed. In front of the entire finance team. Robert exhaled sharply. We need an emergency meeting. Can you join us later today? Of course. But you should know Nathaniel is in my office right now trying to push through those transfers. My team is stalling, but he's desperate. If you're going to act, it has to be now. His tone hardened. This isn't just a board matter anymore. This is criminal. I'm calling the police. The collapse. From the glass walls of the elevator, I could see the lobby where I had once walked in as a hopeful junior accountant. Today, I was walking out as the person who would save the company. At a nearby cafe, I sat by the window, my laptop bag at my side, and watched the storm break. 20 minutes later, 3 police vehicles pulled into Brooks Manufacturing's lot, 2 patrol cars and an unmarked sedan. Officers in business suits moved quickly toward the entrance. My phone vibrated. "Clara, police are here. He's in handcuffs." I allowed myself the smallest smile and took a sip of coffee. 10 minutes later, another call came, this time from Sophie. "Amelia, the district attorney's office, just contacted me. They want my full report for prosecution. How did this escalate so fast?" "He got greedy," I explained. "He tried to grab 700,000 in one morning and claimed powers he didn't have." Once the board saw that they had no choice but to act, Sophie chuckled dryly. "Your timing was perfect." No jury will sympathize with someone who robbed his own father while pretending to modernize the company. Through the window, I saw a news van roll into the parking lot. The story was already spreading. A local businessman's son arrested for embezzlement and fraud. The irony was that Nathaniel had worked so hard to be seen as the rightful heir, and now his name would forever be tied to disgrace. Another message buzzed through Robert Whitman. "Emergency board meeting at 6 p.m. We need to discuss your role going forward." I closed my laptop and stood. The battle was over, but the work of rebuilding had only just begun. The police arrived faster than even I had imagined. Within half an hour of sending my email, I received confirmation 3 squad cars and an unmarked sedan were already outside Brooks Manufacturing. From my seat in the cafe across the street, I watched them enter the building with quiet urgency. No sirens, no spectacle, just the cold precision of law enforcement responding to financial crime. Moments later, my phone buzzed. A message from Clara. "They've taken him. Nathaniel's in handcuffs." I closed my eyes for a brief second, allowing myself to exhale the tension I had carried for months. The scheme, the lies, the arrogance, it was over. The call from the board. Not long after my phone rang again. Robert Whitman, chairman of the board, spoke in a voice tight with disbelief. "Amelia, we've reviewed everything. The evidence is overwhelming. Thank you. You may very well have saved the company." His words carried a weight I wasn't prepared for. For weeks, I had operated like a soldier on a battlefield, documenting and preparing, never letting myself feel the full burden. Now, hearing those words, I realized the scale of what had been at stake. Robert continued. "We've already frozen accounts, reset authorization codes, and locked Nathaniel out of all systems. There will be an emergency board meeting this evening. I'd like you to be there." "I'll be there, I promised." Consequences. The fallout came swiftly. By the end of the week, news outlets across Ohio carried the story, "Prominent businessman's son arrested for embezzlement and fraud." Reporters highlighted not just the $2.4 million stolen, but the audacity of attempting to restructure the company illegally in a desperate bid for control. Nathaniel was formally charged with embezzlement, mail fraud, and filing false corporate documents. He faced a lengthy prison sentence, and the Brooks family name, once a symbol of steady leadership, was now synonymous with scandal. For Mr. Brooks, the betrayal was devastating. He had spent 3 decades building the company, never imagining that his own son would attempt to destroy it. I visited him once at his home, where he sat silently in an armchair, eyes distant. "I thought giving him chances would help him grow," he said softly. "I never thought he'd burn it all down." There was no anger in his voice, only sorrow. A new beginning. 6 months later, Brooks Manufacturing looked different. The board had unanimously appointed me as permanent CEO. We implemented new financial controls, transparency measures, and third-party audits. I wanted to make sure no single-person family or otherwise could ever manipulate the system again. Investors, once skittish, began to return. Contracts resumed. Employees, though, shaken by the scandal, found renewed pride in their work. The company, once threatened by greed, was being rebuilt on a foundation of integrity. From my new office, the same one Nathaniel had tried to claim as his throne, I sometimes caught myself reflecting on how close we had come to ruin. I kept Sophie's 40-page forensic report in a locked drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what vigilance and patience could accomplish. Reflection. Looking back, I realized that justice doesn't always roar in with drama. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the late nights spent documenting transfers, the calm nod to a colleague signaling stall for time, the patience to wait for a fraudster to overplay his hand. Nathaniel had believed entitlement could substitute for competence. He thought inheritance excused corruption. But in the end, he wasn't brought down by my anger. He was undone by his own arrogance. As I stood before the board months later presenting the company's new strategic plan, I felt an unshakable certainty integrity would always outlast greed. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.